Today I'm going to paint these 3 coneflowers using watercolor. Supplies for today: I've got a pencil and eraser, a spray bottle, tissue, water, a palette of paints, a palette for mixing, and I've got a very small 00 round brush, and this is an Escoda Reserva size 4 round brush. But any brand of brush will do, as long as you've got a really small detailed brush and a medium-sized round brush. Today I'm going to be using my Baohong sketchbook. Baohong makes different sized sketchbooks, also with different types of paper inside. Those that have got the green cover have got cold pressed paper inside. The page size in the sketchbook is about 16 by 24 centimeters, or around about 6.5 by 9.5 inches. I'm going to start with my pencil sketch already on the page. You can find the link to the free traceable sketch reference in the description box below. This tutorial and all of its sketches and pictures of the final sketch can be found on my Patreon channel. You can join as a free member and have access to all of these references and video. I'm going to start by erasing some of the pencil that is on the page because I don't want the graphite to show through the final sketch. So I'm going to use my kneaded eraser, and over the pencil I'm just going to roll it, and that should lift up a lot of the graphite, just leaving a light pencil sketch below. Anywhere that it's still dark, I'm just going to run the eraser over and lift the graphite there. Today I'm going to use my Mungyo set of watercolors. Although the Mungyo set claims to be an artist grade paint, it is still a student grade paint. But as far as student grade paints is concerned, I really rate it, and I think that they are very good quality student grade paints. They moisten very easily, and once I've wet them down, they become very creamy, highly pigmented, and easy to work with. I've got a whole tutorial on different watercolor brands and makes, and the pros and cons of all of them, as well as my personal choices for student and artist grade paints. I will put a link to that video in the description box below if you're interested in the different kinds of watercolor paints that I've got in my studio. I'm going to start by spraying the colors down to activate them. I'm going to start by doing the top of the coneflowers, and in order to do that I'm going to do a graded color from light to dark on each of them. I'm going to use 3 colors to do that, and I'm going to prepare the colors before I begin. So starting with the lighter color at the top, I'm going to do a mix. I'm going to add some yellow-orange and mix it with some raw umber in about equal ratios, I think. And then I'm just going to add a bit of orange to that. And I don't want it too dark. I'll work with it in quite a light consistency. I like that for a nice light color. Then I'm going to grade it to just raw umber in the middle, I think. And then at the bottom I want a much darker color. These Mungyo colors have got strange names, different to many of the others. This color here is called brown red. What I'm aiming for here is a very dark brownish purplish color. So just keep that in mind, considering whatever watercolors you might be using. You might not have the same color, but I'm going to use that red brown and then just add a little bit of purple to it, maybe a bit more purple. Alright, I'm happy with that. I'll work with one at a time. I'm going to start with the top one. I'm just going to put some water down in that top of the cone area, just to encourage the colors to blend. I don't want it too wet. I don't want the water pooling at all, just lightly glistening so that I can do a graded wash, wet in wets. I'll start with the lighter color. I don't want to go too heavy with the pigment on my brush. I can always add more later, but with a light consistency I'm going to put this first color down at the top. I'm going to put it further than I want the color to go so that I can do the blending. Then I'll take that raw umber in the middle and then the darker color at the bottom. Here I'm starting at the outer edge and rather blending it inwards. Alright, so I'm drying off my brush and then I'm just going to encourage a bit of blending here. So I'm just going to stipple with my brush to try and get a little bit of texture. It's still quite wet, so it's still going to blend, but as it dries, it will blend less. So you can see I'm getting a little bit of texture in it here. I'm happy to come with an additional layer if necessary and add some more. But now what I think I'll do is just pick up a bit of that darker color and tap it in just at the bottom here, now that that has all blended upwards. Alright, I'm happy with that. I don't want to overdo it. I'll keep an eye on it. I might move things around a little bit, but in the meantime I'm going to repeat the process with the other two. I maybe don't want quite as much blending as before, so I'm going to just put a bit less water. The wetter it is, the less control I have with how much it blends, but I still do want to encourage the blending. It's quite concentrated. I'm just going to take some of that off my brush. Then I'll go straight into the raw umber. You can see it's blending a lot less now because I've put less water down on the page. That's fine. Taking the darker color from the bottom. And then let me just clean and dry off my brush and encourage some blending here. And then I'm just going to add this darker color at the very bottom again. Alright, let's do the same on the final one. Every bit of support that my YouTube videos get help me to grow my channel. And supporting me doesn't have to cost you anything. If you are enjoying this video, please click the like button below. Let me know what you think in the comments. And also let me know the sorts of videos that you would like to see in the future. I would love to hear from you. I just think that there's a bit too much of the darker pigment on my brush, that's why I'm tapping it off. Now I'm just going to rinse off and encourage that blending again. And then I'll put this darker color at the bottom. Whilst those top areas dry, I don't want to start on the petals just yet, otherwise the colors will run into each other. So I'm going to do a bit of work on the stalks and leaves for now, just to do a light base color, and I'll come back and add to it in an additional layer. So I don't want to go too bright a green here. I think I'm going to take some of this olive green. But even that, I think, is going to be, it's quite a bright green, and I'm looking for a little bit to tone that down. I'll take some of this green-grey, just to try and knock it back a bit and make it look a bit more natural. Yeah, that's a bit more of a khaki color, so I'm happy with that. And I want to work with quite a watery consistency here, so it's just so that I've got room to add darker veins and shadow areas. So I'm really going to water this down with the knowledge that this is my first layer, and just work on all of the stalks and leaves and put this down as the base color on all. If you are enjoying this tutorial and are gaining value from it, please consider making a small donation to me on my Buy Me a Coffee platform. As you can imagine, these tutorials take many hours of work to put together. I appreciate any and all donations, as they help me to continue building this platform. I'm going to let this entire layer dry now before I continue further. That first layer is completely dry now, and I'm going to work on the petals. I'm also going to do graded color in the petals from a yellow up to rose madder. So I'm going to also prepare 3 colors, I think. I'm going to start with just yellow, and I'm going to prepare the 3 colors so that they're ready to go. Just water that down a bit. Then I'm going to use that yellow orange again, but just on its own. And I'm just going to add some water to it. And then for that really sort of highlight color at the center, I'm going to use rose madder. Now that those colors are prepared, I'm going to do it flower by flower. I'm going to work on the front-facing petals first. So the ones that are at the back, I'm not going to put any water down. And to prepare for the wet and wet that I'm going to do, I'm just going to put some water down on those front-facing petals first. And then I'm going to work my colors from light to dark. So I'm going to, still some red on my brush there. I'm just making sure that's all off before I pick up the yellow. Alright, I'm going to pick up the yellow first and put it on the tips. Then I'll pick up the yellow orange. And I'm just feathering it into the yellow to get a nice graded wash to it. I'm going to rinse off my brush and just send that yellow orange all the way to the top, but in a lighter consistency. Now I'm going to pick up the rose madder, but when I put it down, I'm going to start from the outside in like I did with the darker color down here. Just, I think it makes the blending less abrupt. So I'll put it in at the top here. I'll worry about the blending once my color is down. It's obviously doing a lot of the blending on its own anyway. Now that that color's down, let me see if I can blend it a bit, and then I might come and add a bit more. I just don't want to overdo the rose madder and then have it overpower everything. So I'm just encouraging some blending here. So I'm just doing this with a slightly drier brush. I don't want to add any more water into it at this stage. I just want the blending to be nice and smooth. I think I'm going to add some more rose madder at the top. I just like to get quite a lot of contrast. The further that you can push apart the lightest light colors on your painting and the darkest darks, the bigger the difference between those two, the more impact the painting is going to have. So that's why I'm just adding this rose madder in up at the top. And now let's do some blending. Maybe what I'll do is pick up some of the yellow orange on my brush and just drop that in at the middle. And really what I'm doing is leaving the light yellow at the tips alone to get that contrast that I was talking about. I'm happy with that. Let's go and repeat the process on the other two. So I'm just putting water down on the front facing petals here. I'll start with my yellow at the tips. Because this one is slightly smaller, I'm not going to sort of stress quite as much as I did this. One at the top will be my biggest and the focal one. I'm kind of just doing a repeat on the smaller ones, but I can't do as much detail or I'll worry about it as much as I did the main one. Alright, I'm going to tap that color off my brush, pick up the rose madder and drop it in at the top. I'll tap off my brush and then just encourage some blending downwards. And then let me just drop in some more rose madder up at the top. And the same on the last one. I have got a Facebook group that I would love for you to join. Its name is Christine McLaren Art. This is a space where members like you can upload and share pictures of your completed tutorials. I love to see the finished tutorials of all of my followers. So if you complete this tutorial, please post a picture in my Facebook group for me to see. Facebook is a bit confusing, but I also have a Facebook page. This is the place where I share links to my videos. So just to be safe, why not go ahead and like and join both the Facebook page and group. Then you won't miss a thing and I will be able to see your finished artworks. Right, now that everything's just been sitting around a bit, I'm just having a look at the first one. I'm I'm quite happy with it. If I see, though, it's still dampish, so I can move things around. If I see that a kind of line is forming between my colors, I'm just going to use my dried off brush just to encourage some blending there. Yours may not have done that, and so that may not be necessary. We don't want to overwork it, but I'm just looking for a smooth color change. Alright, I'm going to let that dry completely before we carry on. I will come and work on the back petals later when they've dried completely, but for now I'm going to do a bit more work on the leaves, and to do that I'm going to use a smaller brush. This is a size 00. Anything like that or a 0 or a 1 would work. I just want to have a bit more control over what I'm doing. I'm going to pick up that color that I had prepared for the stalks and leaves. I'm going to start up at the top here, put that in wet on dry now. I haven't pre-wet the stalk. And this area up at the top will be in shadow, so I'm going to put that in quite a concentrated consistency. And then with water on my brush, I'm just going to blend that color downwards. I'm just going to pick up a bit more. And maybe what I'll do also is just on one side of the stalk, let's make it the left hand side, I'm going to try and make it look a little bit three-dimensional. So I'll put a bit more color on one side than the other, and then just blend it a bit. And then on the leaf I'm going to give it some veins. I'll put this down the center. And then I'll do these side ones. On this one I'll put the central vein slightly more to the right, because the leaf is pointing away from us a little. For the central one, let's get quite a lot of the more concentrated color on the tip of the brush, putting it in up at the top here. Let me take it down the left a bit before I rinse off my brush. I'm going to blend that downwards now, and then just blend this color that I've put on the left out a little bit. Because I'm working wet on dry, it's a little bit reluctant to blend, so let me take a medium consistency of that color and just encourage it over to the right a little bit. And maybe just underneath the little part that sticks out, I'll just put a bit of darker there, just to change things up a bit so it's not all the same. Now, because this is the central one and I want to give it a bit more attention than the others, I'm going to get a bit of a different gradient of color in the leaf. So just with my larger brush, I'm going to work wet and wet and just put some water on this leaf. I'll do the veins in a later layer. For now, what I'm going to do is put some darker at the top and just encourage it down on the whole leaf, just for a bit of texture and difference. It's quite a big area, this leaf, so I don't want it all the same color. So I'll just put that darker color up at the top and just encourage some blending. And maybe we'll even put some down the middle. I don't want this leaf to all be the same color. The reason I'm doing this is to try and get a bit of texture to it. So just make sure that the color that you put in doesn't blend all the way. And then I'll just get some fairly concentrated and just put that up here on the top. Send a bit of it down that center. I'll come back and do that area below. I'm going to give that a minute or two to dry. So let me go to this one in the meantime. I'm getting that concentrated color for the shadow of the stalk. And I think actually I'm going to put a bit of stalk up here as well. And then blend it. And then just a bit on the left. And blend. I'm going to just do some more of the shadow color up here. And maybe on this one it's also sort of more front facing than that one. Maybe I'm going to do a bit of leaf texture on this one as well. Seeing as I'm coming back to do veins in an additional layer on that center one, let me do the same thing here. So I'm just putting a little bit of water down first to encourage some blending. I'm going to pick up some of that color. Let's drop it around the side and then just blend a bit. Now I'll do that stalk there, the rest of it. And there will be what remains of this stalk that's behind. I'll just do that little bit there and then down here. I just want to feather the ending of each of them. And then I'll just do the last remaining bit of the stalk here. Alright, then let's let that dry and then I'll come back and do those veins. I'm now going to work on the petals that are in the background and then just to finish off the final few leaves. So those petals that are in the background, they're going to be in a little bit of shadow. I'm not going to use the lighter yellow at all. I'm going to start with the yellow-orange. Put that in first. I'm going to work with my smaller brush and I'm going to work wet on dry, so I'm not putting any water down first. I've just gone over the front petal a bit. Alright, I'm just going to correct that. And then into that I'm going to drop the rose madder. I'll drop it in first and then I'll do the blending. And I might just add the littlest bit of green just to add to the shadow at the back there. And I'll repeat the same for the other flowers. Alright, now for this petal, I'm going to get that green on my smaller brush in a thicker consistency. I want it concentrated but not too heavily loaded. I'll come and do the central vein first and then do the side ones. And I'll do the same on these ones here. Now that that's completely dry, what I'm now wanting to do in this final layer is just add some texture to the top of the flowers and also some line veins on the petals. And we can do that in two different ways, and I'll demonstrate both depending on what supplies you've got. So I bought these pastel pencils a week or two ago and I've been really keen on trying them out. I bought these so that I could do things like little accent flowers on top of greenery, because you can put the pastel pencil on top once something is complete to get some pops of color. But I'm going to use the sort of vermilion orange color to do some accents today. So if you've got a pastel pencil or a watercolor pencil, you can do that on your painting. But I'll also use just watercolor and my small brush on a different flower so that you can see both techniques and you can choose which method you're wanting to use. So I'm going to start with the pastel pencil first. I'm just going to move that out the way. And on the head of the flower here, I want to get some stippled effect. So I'm going to use my pastel pencil and I'm going to do some markings on it. So taking my pencil, I'm going to do some short marks. I'm going to think of the angle that on this side, I'm going to angle my lines slightly that way, and on this side slightly that way. So just keep that in mind. I'll start at the bottom and just do some short quick lines. I don't want them to look planned or or equally spaced, so I've got to just move around, making sure that they don't go in straight lines like soldiers. And when they come here, I'll stick them out the side a little bit just to get a bit of depth to the outside here. And then I think I'm going to get a darker color just to get more texture at the base here. Maybe I'll use this darker blue, Prussian blue color, and just maybe go over some of the ones I've done at the bottom here, just to get a bit of contrast in this darker area at the bottom. Right, I don't want to overdo it. Then when it comes to the petals, I'm going to use that same reddish color. I'll start here. This one is the easiest to see and do. So lightly, I'm just going to do a stroke down the middle to get a bit of a vein texture, and following the line of the outside of the petal, I'll add in some extras. You can see how convenient it is just to have the pastel pencil to sketch in these lines quickly. Now I will do the same thing. Maybe I'll do this one, it's the next biggest one, just so we can see a little bit more clearly. I'm going to try and do the same thing, but with my watercolor paint instead. So I've got my colors already prepared. I think for this area here, I will start with this darker color down at the bottom, and then maybe go to more of the rose madder as I get further up. I'm using my really small brush, my 00. And I'm going to want this in a very thick consistency so that it's concentrated and that it really does pop off the page. So I'm just mixing that up, getting that on my brush, and I'll do the same effect down at the bottom. And we really want that contrast, so I'm making sure that the color is nice and thick on my brush. With that color on my brush, I'll add in some of the rose madder. There we go, that's enough. Now for the veins here, I don't want too concentrated. I don't want it to be too big of a contrast. Just like I used my pencil lightly over there, the same thing, I don't want too concentrated color on my brush for the veins, so I'll get it in a less concentrated mix, dab off my brush, and then just do some quick and gentle strokes here. So I've done both techniques here, and you can decide which one you prefer. I suppose I would say that the pastel pencil works for or wins on convenience, but maybe the watercolor looks better as a product. Because my brush is already in my hand, I'm going to finish off the third one using the watercolor technique and not the pastel pencils. And there's the final sketch. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button. Until next time, bye for now.